Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs! Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more of the Pokemon Adventures manga of the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire story arc. We're about to check out the last few chapters of Volume 64/Volume 3 of the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire story. But what happened previously? After a thorough thrashing from Archie and Maxie, commanding Kyogre and Groudon, Ruby and Emerald found themselves in Meteor Village, home of the Draconoid people, where they met with the Elder. As it turns out, the Elder has taken in Archie and Maxie so they can teach Groudon Precipice Blades and Kyogre Origin Pulse in order to stop the meteorite. The Draconids also reveal that Zinnia has defeated Sapphire and destroyed the dimensional shifter attached to the rocket that the Devon Corporation was sending up to meet the meteorite. But the Elder reveals why the Draconid people do not approve of Zinnia's action. While they mourn the loss of Aster, the mission should have come first, and Zinnia has let her personal vendetta cloud her judgment. They also find that Norman, who had previously met with the Draconid people in order to tame Rayquaza, is also present, looking to join in saving the world. They use Hoopa's rings in order to transport themselves to Johto, where Rayquaza seems to have gone to, somewhere over Goldenrod City. They end up at the Pokemon Association building where Rayquaza previously escaped from. They end up coming upon footage of the original capture of Rayquaza. They plan to use a smaller version of the ultimate weapon in order to drain Rayquaza's power and capture it. This was headed up by Mr. Stone himself. Unfortunately, because of the special condition that Rayquaza is able to give to its rider, no one noticed that someone was riding on the back of Rayquaza when they fired the weapon. The Ruby ends up fully understanding why Zinnia is so determined to strike back against the Devon Corporation. But their hunch was right, as Rayquaza does appear, feasting on meteorites falling upon the Earth. Ruby and Norman try to take on Rayquaza, but Ruby ends up captured, with only the green orb that Emerald had handed over, keeping Rayquaza from crushing Ruby in its grasp. Ruby offers to teach Rayquaza Dragon Ascent, and Rayquaza seems to begrudgingly agree. So Ruby wants to team up with Sapphire to do this. Meanwhile, Zinnia's allies in the Neo, Team Aqua, and Team Magma are defeated by the Frontier Brains, while Sapphire, after her defeat from Zinnia, is taken in by a secret base master named Aruna, or Arun? Hard to say, who seems to also be a friend of Wally. Emerald is able to use Hoopa's rings in order to locate Sapphire, while Archie and Maxie finish their training, but they're determined to test out their newly learned moves on Hoopa of all people. So just as Ruby and Norman are ready to return to Meteor Village, going through one of Hoopa's rings, Hoopa directs its ring towards Groudon and Kyogre, and because of Rayquaza's, tendency towards the two, they're ready to fight. As Rayquaza goes towards Kyogre and Groudon, Emerald tells Hoopa not to allow this to happen, so Hoopa directs it to where Sapphire is. Wally tries to battle the rampaging Rayquaza, but Ruby stops him, still trying to reason with the creature. That is until he sees Sapphire, who he immediately tries to apologize to. But Sapphire mostly only agrees because the planet is in danger, especially after he had hidden so much from her. Emerald, Maxie, and Archie also arrive on the scene, but Maxie and Archie force their way through Hoopa's ring, leaving Hoopa very injured in the process. But Ruby, Sapphire, Maxie, and Archie begrudgingly agree to work together in order to avoid certain destruction. But we're missing a few people, namely Red, Green, Blaze, and Amber, who were all previously attacked. They've all been taken aboard the Team Rocket airship, as Giovanni has appeared in order to also join in the effort of stopping the destruction of their world. I mean, his stuff is here. So what'll happen next? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright. Okay, I'm gonna stop saying the actual titles of each of what chapter number it is, because that's got to throw me off just a little bit. So you got the previous chapters would have been Hoopa connects, Sawsbuck breaks through or pierces through, Magnezone shoots, and Tropius floats. And this chapter should be Wello flaps. We pick up with Giovanni confronting Red, Green, Blaze, and Amber. Red questions, avoid the crisis on this planet, you say? Giovanni says, look, gesturing to a holographic screen. Red is shocked, saying, those are... And upon the screen, oh geez, the meteor got that close? Or is that just one of the bigger ones? We see Rayquaza, Primal Kyogre, and Primal Groudon all attacking a meteorite. Blaze says, Primal Groudon, and Amber says, Primal Kyogre, even Rayquaza. Green questions, aren't those three of Hoenn's legendary Pokemon? Red says, yeah, they were the ones who fought in the incident 4 years ago, and that's the huge meteorite that was on the news. But Giovanni eyes him, saying, incorrect. That's only one of a small group of meteorites. Red says, small? That colossal thing? See, that's what I'm saying. It's just like, dude, that's so big. Meanwhile, Blaze trembles, saying, what the hell? Why do I see fighting side by side, using primal reversion's power for a common goal? I knew it. He's not my boss. There's no way he's Team Magma's Maxie, the one who said we will awaken Groudon and cover Hoenn, know the entire world in boiling magma. Amber says, yes, but you need a planet to do that. That's why. Amber with the real logic. Blaze shouts, I know that. As for me, I don't care if this world gets reduced to ash at the hands of some idiot, but I certainly won't let a meteorite do so. I feel like Blaze is a little caught up in his own feelings. Giovanni smirks, saying, I feel the same. I can't achieve world domination if there isn't a world to dominate. He then looks away, melancholy, filling his eyes, saying, and I simply cannot let Team Rocket end like that. Red, hearing this, shouts, how selfish can you get? The Green seems to question something. Blaze shouts, quit whining. You think I'll wait patiently until that stupid meteorite comes and destroys everything? Amber shrugs, saying, please, let's stop fighting now. We must figure out how to protect this planet. While Red is still seething, Green grabs his shoulder, saying, calm down, Red. I know it's frustrating, but let's focus on the important matter here, the meteorite. She then turns to Giovanni, questioning, so, what's the current situation? And yeah, I get Red being mad, but honestly, if anybody probably would have the most reason to be pissed off at Giovanni, I think it would be Green after the stunt he pulled with her parents. Giovanni says, right now, I'd say there's no need for us to act. Look, and he gestures to the screen again. Red says, the meteorites are being vaporized by that great power. Green says, they're breaking apart, as they see Rayquaza just drilling through the meteor. Meanwhile, on its back, Ruby and Sapphire are trying their best to withstand the intensity of everything going on. Ruby calls out, what intense heat! Sapphire, are you okay? She gives a nod while gritting her teeth. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Archie says, can it just get destroyed already? Maxie adjusts his glasses, saying, we'll need more power than this for the meteorite that will come in 3 days. Uh-oh. What the heck? Suddenly, Archie's leg dissolves at the knee, and he falls to the ground. Maxie calls out, Archie! Oh, but then Maxie's arm breaks off too. Holy crap. What are their bodies made out of? What resurrected them? Was it the orbs themselves, maybe? Archie says, damn it, our bodies won't last for the crucial moment. While Maxie just simply looks at his broken off arm, saying, it seems we have consumed too much of what little energy we had. But we can endure it until we destroy that little meteorite, right, Archie? Maxie says, yeah, looks like once again the only time everything went well was when we joined forces, Maxie. Meanwhile, back on the back of Rayquaza, Sapphire seems to notice something and pats Rayquaza's head, forcing it to change direction. Ruby calls out, what's wrong, Sapphire? But he's cut off by the jerking of Rayquaza as it moves out of the way as the meteorite explodes. Well, shatters more like it, but it ends up raining down on Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon, causing a bit of destruction, but not as much as if the whole thing had just came down normally. Meanwhile, aboard the airship, Amber cheers saying they did it! But then he notices what seems to be an injured Archie and Maxie left in the rubble of the destroyed meteorite. Amber cries out, our bosses! He tells Giovanni, we have to go and help them. Giovanni or something, right? We're leaving. Oh, shoot, I completely forgot. I don't know if I even put it up for the last one, but Rayquaza, one of my favorites. And then you got Swellow. I chose to do this, and yet I always end up forgetting sometimes. As Amber and Blaze descend on Swellow, they cry out for their bosses. But as they land, they're shocked, seeing their boss's body completely start to dissolve away. Maxie says, with a wave, you're alive, Blaze. While Archie says, hey there, Amber. Amber goes over to Archie saying, boss, this. While Blaze runs over to Maxie saying, boss, you're my boss, right? Hang in there. But as she grabs Maxie's hand, it dissolves. Amber pushes Blaze back, saying, Blaze, you mustn't touch them. Blaze questions, then what should I do? Maxie simply says, please, be calm. There's nothing you can do. Our time is up. Amber questions, what happened, boss? Maxie, with a smile, says, in our remaining time here, it wouldn't hurt to talk about it. Maxie says, you're right. Back then, we absorbed the orbs into our bodies and became one with Kyogre and Groudon. During that time, we had to use a remarkable amount of energy. It was difficult to even keep standing. However, with the armor called Eternity, we could prolong our lives. And with the promise of that, and the sword called Instant, Archie and I fought. And now that's Maxie talking, and then Archie says, finally, I won. Maxie says, the moment I lost, I appeared in a bizarre place. Oh, wait, the distortion world? They ended up in the distortion world. Well, Maxie ended up there. It was a nonsensical world where what seemed to be up was down. Horizontal was vertical, and I couldn't tell if just a moment had passed or an eternity. All I knew was that I was in that world. Like Archie then says, after I was defeated at the battle frontier, I went to the same place. There we had no bodies, just our consciousness remained. Or maybe we existed just at the molecular level, which would explain why we never actually saw them. They were kind of almost out of sync in that place. They say in that place, the two of us became one. Yeah. How much time passed, we don't know. But suddenly a hole opened in that world. Now, this takes place before Platinum and so, a hole opening. So it wouldn't have been from Team Galactic. Oh, wait, yeah. Hey, who was all involved with that? Oh, okay, it was during the Heart Gold and Soul Silver story arc. Okay, man, all that was so long ago, I'm forgetting a lot of it. It's the ruins of Alph, when Lance, Giovanni, and Price teamed up. Oh, man. See, this all feels like a setup for Team Rainbow Rocket, if I didn't know any better. You feel me? Lost in other dimensions and stuff. Man. It feels like a good setup. In that moment, we heard a voice calling to us, so we headed through the hole, and when we regained our senses, Maxie says, we had been brought to the Johto region, and the voice said, Archie finishes saying, we had to learn about Mega Evolution, obtain the orbs, return to Hoenn, and once more become one with Kyogre and Groudon. Maybe the voice was Kyogre and Groudon's, or maybe this planet. In any case, we were called back from that world to protect this planet, but it looks like we didn't have the necessary power. Maxie, if we get to live again, would you like to? Maxie says, yes. Let's join forces again, Archie. They say, Blaze, you. And Max says, Amber, this planet, protect. They both fade away. That feels like such a setup for Team Rainbow Rocket. But I don't think they adapt that in the manga, which is a shame. Because, you could do it. You could do a canonical, because I know that in the game, Team Rainbow Rocket is made up of the villains of various different games from alternate dimensions where they kind of succeeded. But I feel like you can make an in-canon, like, this world's version of all those villains. Amber and Blaze fall to their knees and cry out for their bosses. Meanwhile, Giovanni, Red, and Green are still watching. Red says, Kyogre and Groudon are. Green says, returning to their original forms. They stopped moving. Giovanni says, this much power spent only to destroy a small meteor, and the size of the one coming in 3 days might be hundreds of times bigger. Red says, Giovanni, what can we do to help? Kill us, please. We can't just watch and do nothing. But Giovanni doesn't respond. Meanwhile, with Rayquaza, Green wields Ruby, too many colors. Ruby wields the green orb, saying that they have subsided, Rayquaza. The falling meteors are gone. What has you so agitated? The Sapphire snatches the orb out of Ruby's hand. Ruby questions this. The Sapphire takes the orb, closes her eyes, and holds it to her chest. And suddenly her eyes are jolted open as she feels something. Oh, something flows into her mind. As Ruby calls out to her, Sapphire comes back to her senses, grabs Ruby's hand, and writes on it with her finger. Ruby says, power, more power, more power. The power we have now isn't enough to face the incoming meteorite. That's why Rayquaza is angry. What can we... That's it. In the picture I took of Sky Pillar's mural, there might be a clue. As he brings up his camera, he says, Yeah. It's better if you take a look, Sapphire, as she points to herself. She looks at the mural and seems to realize something. She tries to get some words out, but she still can't. Ruby says, huh? What? Ruby points to Sapphire points to the mural on the camera, and then points to Rayquaza. Ruby looks at it saying, you think that's Rayquaza? But then Ruby realizes it says, it's Mega Evolution, remembering the footage from before that he saw at the Pokémon Association building. He says, in order to face the huge meteorite, we need to Mega Evolve Rayquaza into Mega Rayquaza. Oh, but Sapphire seems to detect something, and Ruby notices too, as they just narrowly avoid being hit by something flying towards them. Ruby says, I knew you'd come. In fact, I was hoping you'd show up. Your timing is perfect. On the back of the incoming Salamence, which... Bada bing, Salamence. A voice says, you impotent little boy, to make us rendezvous on Rayquaza's back when I haven't forgiven your act. And if you are forming a duo here, we will make a duo too. Lend me your strength, Aster. Zinnia says, oh, with keystones on both her legs. Interesting. Yeah, that would make for a good place to end the chapter. Zinnia. You need to get your mind in gear, because you're jeopardizing the planet at this rate. Alright, this chapter is titled Noivern Guides. Zinnia, she swoops in on Ruby and Sapphire in the back of Rayquaza on top of her Salamence. She calls out, I'll knock you both off of the Dragon Lord. The ones to destroy the meteor will be me and will be the Draconids. But Sapphire sends out 2 Pokeballs. Oh, bringing out Gallade and Gardevoir. They both manage to deflect the Salamance's attack. But Zinnia tells Zinnia calls out, don't worry about Gardevoir and Gallade. Your targets are the kid and the girl. Ruby then notices something off to the side. He calls out to Sapphire, there was another Pokemon here? But Zinnia calls out to Salamence to use Dragon Pulse. Ruby commands his Gardevoir to use Misty Terrain. But both Gallade and Gardevoir are hit pretty hard, taking massive damage. Ruby calls out, Ruru, Hiruru. Zinnia says, you can't have the power of Noivern's Boom Burst with Misty Terrain. Ooh yeah, Boom Burst is a devastating attack, because Noivern is one of my favorite Pokemon! And I have used Noivern on multiple occasions. And I have taught Boom Burst to both my Noivern and my Toxtricity. I've had both at the same time. And Boom Burst is a powerful attack. Like, man, that thing rocks ya. Ruby looks towards Noivern saying, that Pokemon, when did it... I didn't see you give a command. Zinnia says, I told you. If you were going to act as a duo, we would too. Sapphire looks perplexed. Oh, no way. Really? As she sees a figure on the back of Noivern, Sapphire wipes her eyes and then sees nothing there. Rayquaza then looks to Noivern too and seems to notice something as well, dashing towards Noivern. Noivern turns and races off, being chased by Rayquaza. As Ruby questions, Rayquaza, why are you going after Noivern? But Sapphire then starts to ride on Ruby's chest. He says, what? It looked as like someone was on top of Noivern. Sapphire nods. As Zinnia flies alongside them, she says, so you felt it too, huh, kiddo? Even if they're not here, their feelings are. Someone who took on the feelings of the one who bonded is here. The Dragon Lord can feel it too. Ruby turns, saying, Aster's Noivern? Zinnia doesn't respond. Noivern then flies up, and Rayquaza continues to follow, but you can see Ruby's grip starting to slip. Noivern then takes a straight dive, and Rayquaza follows. But at this point, Ruby is barely hanging on, and then Zinnia on her Salamence moves past Noivern towards the back of Rayquaza. Salamence prepares to fire a blast. Ooh, right at Ruby. Ruby erupts in a ball of fire. And finally, seeing him in danger, Sapphire is finally able to speak, crying out Ruby's name. Sapphire calls Gardevoir Glade as she bounds towards the tip of Rayquaza's tail. As Ruby's in a free fall, injured, he says, Sapphire, your voice. But Sapphire bounds off of Rayquaza's tail, reaching for Ruby in the sky, grabbing his hand. And so, following Noivern to a cliff face, Rayquaza lands? And Zinnia on her Salamence arrives too, saying, phew, now there's no one in my way. She gives a bow, saying, Dragon Lord, it has been a while. I've been searching for you since rescuing you from the Pokemon Association's research tower. Despite awakening Kyogre and Groudon in hope of your return, you bonded with and were used by unworthy folk, and out of anger you hid yourself once more. I, the Draconid Zinnia, have become Lord Keeper in Aster's stead. If you would be so kind as to form a bond with someone the likes of myself, that doesn't sound like proper grammar. Form a bond with someone, I guess, maybe. Oh, jeez. But Rayquaza uses his tail to just deck Zinnia right in the stomach. She spurts blood onto a very shocked Salamance's head. But as she struggles to maintain consciousness, says, Dragon Lord? She holds on up the keystone she got from Ruby Sapphire and Emerald, saying, I prepared 5 keystones, but please calm yourself. Please form a bond with me, so that we may save this planet. But Rayquaza then promptly fires a blast at her, knocking her back, and she blacks out. Meanwhile, Emerald arrives on the back of Latias, saying, hey! Ruby calls out, Emerald! As we see Ruby and Sapphire on the back of Tropius. Emerald says, I'm glad you're safe. When I saw you two fall off of Rayquaza, I was worried. Ruby says, thanks to Sapphire and Tropy, we're safe. Where's Rayquaza? Emerald says, it's still circling the skies above Sootopolis. Oh, they're actually at Sootopolis. It's still pretty riled up. I wonder if I can do anything with this. He eyes his dirt launcher. Ruby says, the E-shooter? But what dirt will you use? Emerald says, dirt from Meteor Village. Think it'll work? Ruby says, if only we had our Mega Bracelets. Sapphire then questions, what happened to Zinnia? Emerald says she was severely rejected by Rayquaza and plopped right into the ocean. Latias says, brother said he'd saved her and is dropping her off in Sootopolis City. We should go too. As they head over Sootopolis, they arrive to where Latios is. Latias says, brother. Latias says, yes, there's nothing life-threatening. Everyone then looms over the downed Zinnia. Suddenly a voice calls out, Ruby? As we see Steven and Mr. Stone arrive, Ruby calls out to them. Steven says, Sapphire and Emerald are here too. Zinnia regains consciousness, questioning, Stone? Steven is shocked. As Mr. Stone calls out to Zinnia, Salamance helps her up. Steven moves between his father and Zinnia, but Mr. Stone grabs his shoulder, shaking his head silently. Mr. Stone says, I'm glad. I wanted to see you, Zinnia. He doesn't look at him, pausing for a moment. He then grasps her stomach, saying, I bet you think I deserve this. Laugh at me, criticize me, do whatever you want. But Mr. Stone says, no, that's not it. I want to apologize to you. No, to all of the Draconid people. Zinnia turns, saying, apologize? You want to apologize? Mr. Stone tells her, we were not making light of the Draconid's lore when we captured Rayquaza for research. Because we believed it, we tried to gain complete control of Rayquaza's power. But we were in too much of a rush. We failed to take the time to gain the Draconid's trust and cooperation, and attempted to capture Rayquaza on our own. For that purpose, we did something that could never be undone at the embedded tower. Then, unable to control Rayquaza, we used your attack as an excuse to let it run off and abandon the project. We then focused solely on the development of the dimensional shifter. But I want you to believe me, we sincerely wanted to save this planet and thought we had chosen the right path. But in the end, we still slighted you. I want to apologize for that, so please. And with the deepest bow imaginable, he says, please. Forgive me. Zinnia closes her eyes and then puts a hand on the keystone on her left leg, saying, did you see that, See that? Did you hear that, Aster? He wants us to forgive him. He isn't apologizing at all. He just wants to lessen the brunt of his crimes and wants us to forgive him. I can hear it in every word you speak, your arrogance. There's nothing the Draconids can do that you can't. As long as you have science, you can easily control a legendary Pokemon. That's what you thought, right? Same goes for the dimensional shifter. Did he even know where the meteor would go? Which is actually a good point. I kind of question that too. I'm like, with any luck it goes to the distortion world, or it could end up in ultra space. What if there was another planet with life just like ours? What would he do? Did he even consider that it might be destroyed? Mr. Stone begins to say that's... But Zinnia cuts him off, saying, it's just like it was at the embedded tower. Nothing's changed. Even if there was something that could be hurt or broken, you'd be too concerned with the region and planet's safety and not even think of it. You don't have enough imagination, he says, tears filling her eyes. Mr. Stone has no response. Zinnia says, since we lost Aster, the villagers have given up. They think there's nothing they can do to prevent the planet's destruction. I wanted to do something about that. I knew I was nowhere near Aster's level, but I decided to do everything I could do to protect the planet. Once I took the title of Lord Keeper, villagers who didn't think I was strong enough, who wouldn't acknowledge me, came to get in my way. In the end, they might have been right. Ruby and Sapphire look at each other, not sure what to say. But finally... Because I feel like Emerald's really kind of gotten pushed to the side in all of this. Which is funny, because when he made the scene, I'm like, man, we're really pushing Wally to the side. And now it's just like, man, we're really pushing Emerald to the side. Emerald says, you gotta be kidding, you two. Dragging in the people around you and doing as you please, throwing Hoenn and other people's lives into a panic, then going into give-up mode? Who do you think you are? And with a commanding voice, he says to both Zinnia and Mr. Stone, there are still things left you can do, right? Okay. Emerald stepping up is about friggin' time. Because honestly, they keep getting in each other's way. And yeah, no, one didn't consider the other. They were too hasty in their actions. And honestly, Zinnia did a lot of what the Devon Corporation essentially did. They acted in a way that ended up harming others in the process. So it's about time to actually work together to avoid certain deaths. Alright, in the last chapter of this video and this volume is Glade Rends. Steven turns to Emerald saying, there are still things we can do? Emerald says in a very grumpy mood, yeah. Zinnia, why does a Draconid have to bond with Rayquaza? It let Ruby and Sapphire ride on its back. It learned Dragon Ascent too. It wasn't exactly as you expected, but everything up until now has been according to legend, right? Zinnia doesn't really respond. Emerald says, why do we have to save the planet through just science? Or just legends anyway? If you Draconids have been passing down how to drive away meteors for millennia, there's got to be things that only you would know. If you share everything you know with each other, and make up for each other's weaknesses, you're sure to make a breakthrough. Mr. Stone and Zinnia look at each other in silence. Emerald says, I know you have some unsettled feelings, but Mr. Stone, if you want to apologize to the Draconid, and Zinnia, if you have enough imagination, let's work together to save the planet. Hey, from the mouth of babes. Steven puts a hand on his father's shoulder. And Zinnia finally speaks up, saying the Lord Keeper bonds with the Dragon Lord and heads into space. Then the Dragon Lord destroys the meteor using Dragon Ascent. Emerald says, space? Zinnia says, well, everyone's shocked by this. Zinnia says the Dragon Lord can Mega Evolve without Mega Stones. It seems it has an organ that can take the meteors it eats and use them like megastones. Huh, weird. It's also said that to bond with the Dragon Lord, one needs as many keystones as possible. The 3 I stole from you, Aster, and my own are 2. 5 wasn't enough. Mr. Stone says, so the reason Rayquaza surrounds itself with ozone is so it can work in space. Steven says, but what becomes of the Lord Keeper? Even if they can go to space because of the ozone itself becomes poisonous. Zinnia says, have the Dragon Lord Mega Evolve and attack. That's the Lord Keeper's duty. Sapphire says, meaning. Ruby says, they don't think about coming home. Oh. Huh. So it's do or die no matter what. Dang. Zinnia says something like that. That's why it has to be a Draconid. Mr. Stone says, wait, that's the case. We might be able to help with that. Steven, among the Team Aqua and Team Magma members, the Frontier Brains caught. I heard of the people who were involved in the research project where Steven says, yeah? Mr. Stone says, have them brought here. A voice calls out, I have a question. What exactly is that meteor? Giovanni says, Amber and Blaze now with Archie and Maxie's Megastones, which looked so goofy on them, and Red and Green waving nervously over to everyone else. Emerald says red, and Sapphire says green. But why are you with Team Rockets? Along with Blaze and Amber, too. Red says, it's a long story. Giovanni says, Lord Keeper Zinnia, is that thing really a meteor? Zinnia says, what do you mean? Giovanni says, Mega Evolution can only be activated outside of battle. Cannot be activated outside of battle. If that's true, Giovanni takes the Mega Evolution Stone he had in the R on his jacket. That's wild. Then what is the meaning of this? Oh, he taps the keystone on his lapel and Mega Evolves his Beedrill. Huh. Green says Giovanni's Beedrill isn't the only one. Red says ours can do it too. Amber says, and so can. Blaze says, our leader's key stakes. And so Green's Blastoids Mega Evolves, Red's, I'm literally blanking on the name. I have no words for this. This is really bad. Venusaur. Red's Venusaur. Oh, so many Pokemon. And Amber, I guess, took Archie's Sharpedo, which Mega Evolves, and Blaze took Max's Camerupt with Ultra Mega Evolves. So is it a big Mega Evolution Stone? Steven looks towards the incoming meteor saying, Professor Cosmos said that the meteor suddenly changed its orbit. It changed directions almost like it had a goal. And Rayquaza's Mega Evolving must mean that the meteor is a Pokemon. Oh, that's right. That's right. Red looks to Giovanni like he knows, saying, a Pokemon that comes flying from space. Yeah, about that. I have so many questions about that. Green then speaks up saying, hey, Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon and Rayquaza were able to stop that meteor earlier, right? If we gather different Pokemon's powers and attacks from the ground, you think we'd be able to slow the meteor's descent? Emerald looks to the other saying, an alliance between Legends, science, and nature. Sapphire says there's so much we can do. And so, hours later, oh, it's the Pokemon Association blimp. Okay. Narration reads, preparation to intercept the meteor began in Sootopolis City. The Frontier Brains, who unfortunately don't have redesigns because they didn't really do the Battle Frontier in the remakes, the Elite Four and the Gym Leaders, who all have redesigns that are promptly not seen too clearly because yada yada not really focusing on that, which is a shame because I love Flannery's redesign. Oh, Trickmaster and Hoenn Scientific Elite gathered together. So Trickmaster, Mr. Stone, Tabitha, and Shelly are all teamed up. Trickmaster says, we'll connect this link cable between the Lore Keeper and Sootopolis City. Tabitha says, if we can monitor the situation's the suit's life support system here. Shelly says, we can teleport the wearer there at the last moment. The problem is the needed infinite energy, though. Mr. Stone says, taking into account the target's mass and distance to be teleported, the energy produced destroying the meteor will be enough to use as a substitute. Narration says, so the Kanto and Johto gym leaders and Elite Four will attack at the same time. I guess Emerald's explained the situation to, Gold, Crystal, and Silver is there too. Is this the only time we actually see Silver in a little cameo to the side? Giovanni's full on involved, and Silver gets like a little bit of a cameo. Gold says, anyway, it'll be suit sailing. Crystal says, I think you mean smooth. And then Gold says, Prissy Boy's dad's here too. Prissy Boy. Oh my god. Ruby then introduces Sapphire to the Draconid, saying, this is Granny. Sapphire gives a bow, saying, nice to meet you. The Elder says, thank you. It's all thanks to you that we Draconids have been repaid. I heard that you two had a matching Gardevoir and Gallade. Please take these Megastones. And Sapphire, embarrassed, slaps Granny, saying, matching, you're embarrassing me. Oh my god. Steven then says, I actually came because I wanted you to see these. Sapphire says, Keystones? There's so many. Steven says, 9 years ago we collected them from the embedded tower after capturing Rayquaza. It's likely that they were the stones Aster used to bond with Rayquaza, so they should be returned to the Draconids. Xenia says, so the Keystones you used were Aster's? Steven gets defensive, saying, no, these were different. While journeying to other regions to collect stones, these were entrusted to me by the Mega Evolution Master I met in Kalos. Okay. So Gherkin. Right, Gherkin. I had to think of the name for a second. Ruby questions, a Mega Evolution Master? Steven says, it was from that person I learned Mega Evolution. I was also given the authority to provide only practical instruction on Mega Evolution. There were students from other regions who came to learn it too. Do I know those other people there? I don't think so. I don't know. I can't really tell who's that by Gherkin. The Elder says, I hear there are Draconids in other regions. They may be our descendants. Oh, okay. Is that a way to explaining the other people who kind of seem to really worship dragons? So I guess you could say maybe Lance, I'm blanking on his cousin's name, Claire, and even he was literally the Dragon Master not too long ago. Iris, there we go, Iris. You know, maybe they're all like descendants of Draconids. Xenia takes the container with all of the Mega Evolution stones, saying, with this, I can finally bond with the Dragon Lord. But the container slips from her grasp and shatters on the ground, and Xenia falls. Everyone calls out to her, but she doesn't quite respond. But as everyone rushes to her, Sapphire notices Ruby isn't moving. Ruby says to Sapphire, she did her best to bear the pain to fulfill her duty as lawkeeper. The attack she took from Rayquaza sure was something. They say it doesn't look like she'll be able to walk, let alone go to space. Anyways, we got our bracelets back. We should give them to Emerald. Sapphire then says, hey, yeah, thinking of something bad again, aren't you? Saying this stops Ruby in his tracks. Ruby turns to her, saying, What do you mean, bad? Sapphire says, you're thinking of becoming lore keeper and going to space yourself, aren't you? Ruby laughs it off, saying, that's... But Sapphire says, I told you, didn't I? I won't forgive you if you leave me behind this time. Ruby shrugs, saying, I'm telling you, you've got it all wrong. But Sapphire says, you made a face like you were thinking real hard when Zinnia collapsed. Whatever you do, whenever you do that, it's always... But they're interrupted as Kraft arrives. Someone calling out, Ruby! Oh, it's Lisa! And Tate and Liza and Wallace. Huh. And, I forget his name. Juan, there we go, Juan. We wouldn't have a redesign. Ruby says, Lisa! With Master and Grandmaster and even Tate and Liza. Ruby comes over to Lisa saying, I was waiting for you. Or Lucia. Lucia says, this has really gotten serious. Lucia's so scared. Ruby says, it'll be alright. Everyone's doing their best. Once everything's settled, let's pump up another exciting contest spectacular. Lucia says, of course. Meanwhile, Liza calls out, long time no see, Sapphire, as everyone else is off to the side, but then they notice Sapphire getting increasingly angry. Lucia says, moving on, here's what you asked for. Well, Ruby says, thank you. Right, I'll introduce you to Sapphire. As he turns to everyone else, he says, huh? Where's Sapphire? And they point off to the side as Sapphire is storming away. Ruby follows, saying, there you are, hey, Sapphire, would you? But Sapphire brings out her Glade, saying, Kariri, get him away from me. And Glade half-heartedly starts swinging at Ruby as he says, hey, Kariri. So he brings out his Gardevoir, saying, Rara, stop him. The Gardevoir just has a face of, oh, these two. Ruby calls out, Sapphire, hear me out. Sapphire says, buzz off. No matter what you say, you're always hiding things. And you're flirting with some idol girl to boot, saying things like, I was waiting for you and let's pump it up. What the hell? Ruby says, you're kind of losing me. Anyways, calm down. Sapphire says, not a chance, as she mega evolves her Glade. Ruby says, fine, if that's how it's going to be. And he mega evolves his Gardevoir. Oh, and knocks back Glade. Ruby says, listen, I asked her to bring me the costumes for the contest spectacular. Sapphire says, and now of all times you're going on about contests and costumes. And Ruby says, the costumes are for you and me. Sapphire is shocked as she stops in her tracks. Ruby says, I made them for us to use in contest spectaculars together. And now isn't really the right time for that. But I at least wanted to see you wear yours, so I had Lucia bring them. Sapphire, I want you to wear this and become lore keeper with me. Sapphire is stunned. Ruby says, it's like you said, at first I thought I'd take on the lore keeper's duty by myself. And once I heard what Zinnia said, that the lore keeper can't come back from space, I got scared. Then, earlier when Zinnia collapsed, I thought, if you said I'm going to space with Rayquaza, what would I do? When you were swallowed by Hoopa's rings and I thought you'd gone missing, you battled Zinnia and fell off a rocket. And when I finally saw you again, you couldn't speak. I was so anxious and afraid. I thought I couldn't afford to be separated from you again. My mind spun. I didn't want to be separated from you, but I don't want to put you in danger. But I also want to protect the planet. I want to protect this Hoenn you love so much. And that's why. Please come to space with me. I want to be with you until the last moment, he says, brandishing the outfits. Sapphire promptly faints. Meanwhile, I guess over at Moss Deep Space Center, I'm not really sure. Cosmo's assistants call out, the data is here, Professor Cosmo. The angry assistant says, please look at the results of the component analysis. The worried assistant says, they're not just similar. Cosmo looks at the data saying, the meteorite I mined 4 years ago, its mass has increased thousands of times and is headed this way. Oh, right. The meteor he used. Huh, okay. The happy assistant says, calling it by the same name as before would be confusing. So let's give it a new one. How about Grand Meteor? Delta. Oh, like the Delta story arc. Okay, I get you. Grand Meteor Delta. Okay, so that's even the title in the actual episode. Yeah, so what was it originally? What was the original name of Professor Cosmo? And he was mining. What was the meteorite? Oh, it's just called a meteorite. Oh, the Grand Meteor. Okay. Huh. Okay, that's interesting. So it was originally even called Grand Meteor in the manga. Huh. So everything just kind of comes full circle. Was it the games wanting to make everything kind of connect, or did the manga just get lucky? I wonder. Meanwhile, in Zinnia's home, I don't know, she's laid up in bed with the elder, and she says, you two will bond with the sacred dragon, but you might not be able to come back. You might turn into space dust. Ruby smiles, saying, everyone's gathered, so it won't end that way, right? If they weren't, we wouldn't be doing this. Giving one's life to protect the planet is foolish. I hate self-sacrifice. We'll crush the meteor and come back alive. Sapphire and I, that is. Zinnia says, you're alright with that, kiddo? Sapphire says, it's fine. This guy was crying about how he didn't want to be a pot till he dies. Ruby says, rude, I wasn't crying. Sapphire says, yeah, you were. You had snot dripping just like Moo Moo way back when. Ruby says, really? Sapphire says, really? And then Zinnia starts to laugh and also cry out in pain. Zinnia says, if only we'd met under different circumstances. Ruby says, right, thanks to you. Although Sapphire bumps him in the chest, elbows him in the chest. Sapphire says, it isn't too late. I've got a whole bunch of things I want to ask you and talk about. So wait till we come back, eh? Zinnia doesn't quite look at Sapphire, but she does give a silent yeah. As even Salamence and Sapphire's Agron seem to be having made amends too. That's actually kind of sweet. The hatchet has officially been buried. And then we pick up with Emerald with Trickmaster as they come running over. Emerald saying, hey, the Aqua and Magma suit modifications are complete. But then the two are shocked as they see Ruby and Sapphire in their contest outfits. Oh boy. Gotta put on the greatest show the region has ever seen. I gotta say, this was actually kind of nice, all things considered. It does kind of suck that Archie and Maxie didn't really get to see things through to the end. I don't know. That feels like just a little bit of a jip. Zinnia did kind of get what was kind of coming to her, but fully knowing how everything went down and fully understanding things from her perspective, I can understand her frustration and how her mind could have gotten a little bit clouded on how she should have handled this. Honestly, both Mr. Stone and Zinnia went about all this the wrong ways. And it's one of those things where their desperation got in the way of their rational thinking, which actually happens to people. Sometimes you make rash decisions when you panic a little bit. And I feel that's ultimately what happened. Mr. Stone panicked because of the imminent danger, and he was trying to get things done as quickly as possible, and he missed the key element of, what was about to happen, and what happened to Aster happened. And, Mr. Stone isn't someone who would, have that happen and just be like, oh my goodness. But if anything, it probably made him act even more hasty having that happen, because knowing someone died because of his actions would have made him desperate not to make everything be in vain. But I could see him allowing Rayquaza to escape and being like, no, I don't want to do this anymore because someone lost their life over this, and nobody should have died from this. This was not something where someone should have died. So I could see him just being like, no, we're giving up on the whole Rayquaza thing. It can just escape. That I don't even want to think about that kind of situation. But Zinnia's over here pissed to all hell, trying to get back at them at every turn possible while still do her duty. And then the other Draconid people are just like, no, you can't have it both ways. You should be focusing specifically on your duty. Trying to also stick it to the Devon Corporation, no. But at the same time, because of them using the ultimate weapon, it's the weapon that killed Aster, and now you're using elements of it again in order to do things to Pokemon, because, I mean, it still was having effects on Steven's Magnezone, and who knows what long effects it'll have on Sapphire's Blaziken and Emerald Sceptile. So I could see her just being like, just giving up to their old tricks, just at it again. Like, had it been anything else, she might have kind of gone along with it, but knowing that it was a part of the same weapon that killed Aster is like, oh no, screw these guys. I could see how all the chain of events that happened could go down. Giovanni's involvement is just so incidental, though. It's like, so we really had to squeeze in Giovanni, huh? I mean, not that I'm hating on it. It's just kind of like, it feels kind of weird that we're squeezing him in here. But isn't this like the last point in the timeline where Giovanni is involved in anything? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is like the furthest in the timeline he kind of goes. But knowing what I know about the meteorite, I understand why he's involved now. I'm just like, right, because if that Pokemon is in the meteor, of course Giovanni would be here to kind of bring things full circle, which I'm still kind of mad because I'm like, yeah, I feel like y'all just could. What about Surd? What about Surd, man? And having Archie and Maxie come back in this capacity, then again, having one more character to focus on would have been just too much. Like, they're already juggling too many things. But I'm just like, yo, having Archie and Maxie, Giovanni, and stuff for the Distortion world, I'm like, Surd, where is she? Like, are you ever gonna tell me what happened there? So that's the one thing that kind of leaves me kind of like, dang, I really feel like we should have capped off that plot element, but whatever, it is what it is. Just kind of gotta roll with it. But we've made amends with Zinnia, we've made amends with Devon, we're working with Giovanni to some degree. Everybody's gonna team up, mega evolve, do what they can to hold off this imminent disaster. I don't know how many important people are gonna come together to fight this off, but it's gonna be interesting. Just, where is Rayquaza? Is it still like at the tippy top of Sootopolis, or it's hard to really say. But, you know, the team coming as far as it is, the mangaka team, is like, yeah, I can understand why they kind of reel back a little bit after this on how many concurrent stories they have going, because it's too much. Things aren't bad in terms of the story. I can see it taking a toll on certain story elements. Like, they're not, it feels like they're playing it more safe than they used to in certain elements. But the writing is still tight. It's tight. So that you can never take that away from them. The writing is just always on point, but I feel like they're not putting in as much as they used to in certain elements. They're still doing their damnness, but I don't know. It feels like some elements of how they used to do things is kind of missing that. But I am glad that Ruby was able to finally just be honest in every way possible with Sapphire. No more confusion, no more beating around the bush, just bam, bam, bam. There you go. And I think that's a good thing. Though Blaze and Amber having Archie and Maxie's, mega stones. Amber with that big ass chain and Blaze with those big old glasses. I'm like, yeah, that's silly. But it is what it is. I do find myself kind of wondering how Archie and Maxie would come back in any capacity, but considering even in canon, the readaptation is kind of as far as they go, it is what it is. But let me know your thoughts on these chapters in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I hope to see you in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.